But thank you so much for connecting. I'm pretty sure people will start tuning in as we go on. But just in case, to give a little background of what this is about, first of all, my name is Doris Varias, and I've created a 21-day reading plan called Unwavering. And basically, it's about telling others that we can have unwavering faith, that it doesn't matter what we go through, it doesn't matter what we face, that we can choose to listen to God, we can choose to believe everything that He says about us, and we can choose to believe that He is not finished with us yet. And I feel like, especially during this time, it's so important to cling to God. It's so important to dive into His Word because, I shared this week, how tough it's been for me, just emotionally, how tough it's been, what I've been facing physically, and that I've taken the challenge. And this is why I created the 21-day reading plan, because I'm like, no, it's not going to get the best of me. I choose God. And, in all of this that is happening, and I'm so grateful for those that have reached out either with encouraging words, but also for those that reach out and say, hey, I'm going through the same thing. It definitely helps me understand, like, number one, I'm not alone. And number two, that we're all facing something and that we can do this together. And so it's definitely been a process of, God, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to choose to trust in you, even if right now, I'm feeling a certain way, like I'm feeling certain things. I'm choosing to trust in you. So we are on week 2 of the reading plan. And again, if you started later, that is totally fine. This teaching will help you regardless. And if you would like to get your own copy, this is free. And this is, something that I just want to share with you, just as how it's helping me. This is a resource that you can do on your own time. You set the date and when you want to start it. So there's no dates on it. It's a reading plan and you just go day by day. So I'm going to go over this week, which is called I Choose to Believe Everything That God Says About Me. And this is an affirmation, when we start our journey of faith with God, when we are, listening to God, and we're either writing it down or, we're just making mental notes of it, of what God is saying. And, whether it's through His Word or whether it's through prayer time that we listen to God, or maybe it's through someone else. We receive a word from a friend or a leader, a pastor, and we receive that word. We have a choice. We have a choice to believe in what is being said, when we apply it to our lives. And definitely through the course of time, we will go through doubt. We will go through discouragement. We will go through fear. Those are normal things that happen along a journey. And this is, the life of faith isn't just from here to a year from now and then, it's over. This life of faith is until our last breath here on earth. And we don't know when that time will come, when it will happen. Either, we will die, or Jesus will come back for His people and will be taken with Him. But through that time, we will go through these things. We will go through doubt, discouragement, and fear. So what can we do in those situations when we face that and it feels so overwhelming? When we doubt what God has said because we don't see it, or we doubt ourselves. We doubt that, God could use us, or that God could do good things for us. I mean, that happens where we feel so down. We feel that we don't deserve God. We don't deserve His blessing. We don't deserve His goodness. And so it's a battle. It's it's a fight to hang in there and say, even if I don't see it right now, I'm choosing to believe everything that God says. We will experience discouragement where, negative things will happen, or maybe negative things are said about us, and that feels like such a weight on our lives. Like, oh man, maybe this wasn't true. Maybe what God said about me, or maybe what God, intended for my life, like maybe it's not going to happen because, other people don't believe in me. Other people have said negative things about me. And, could this really happen? And so that's where you could be in your battle, where you're like, Doris, you don't know my life. You don't know my circumstances. You don't know the people that I live with. You don't know the people that are surrounding me. Maybe they aren't, 100% positive or 100% confident in you. And so that's where you have to say, I choose to believe everything that God says about me, that it doesn't matter who says what, or even when people don't say anything, because even that could hurt us when we feel like a void. We feel that maybe we should be told something and we don't receive it, and that could harm us as well. And so also we could face fear. We could be afraid. We could be afraid of the unknown. We could be afraid of, when is it going to happen, God? I don't see it happening. We could be afraid of just the mystery of it all. And we could be afraid of what could happen. We could be afraid of, if we do this, and God is asking us to obey. God is asking us to do something in response to what he's telling us, that we could feel very afraid. And I want to tell you that you are not alone. You are not alone when you go through doubt, when you go through discouragement, when you go through fear. And we see that in these men and women in the Bible, that yes, they're given the title of men and women of faith, but that was after they had gone through all these challenges. And we're specifically looking at, through this 21-day reading plan, 5 people. And I'm just going to go one by one through them, and I'm going to show you how they faced certain challenges in their life. God spoke to them. God, gave them word, and along the course of time, it wasn't that they received that answer right away. It was over the course of time. And so they saw challenges in their life. So we're going to start out with Abraham. And Abraham received that promise from God, get out of your country, away from your family. I'm going to take you to a land, and I will show you, and I will multiply you. Now, mind you, Abraham had no children, so it made no sense that God said, you are going to be a father. And he's like, I don't even have a child. How is that promise real? And so he faced this doubt in his life, and he started coming up with logical reasons, and he started to come up with his own plan, like we do when we face doubt. We're like, okay, I'm going to help you, God. I don't see this happening, so I could do this, I could do that. And Abraham looked at his servant, and he said, well, since I don't have any children, God must be saying that it's going to be through my servant. It's going to be through he has children, he has a family, so maybe everything that I've acquired throughout my lifetime, it's just going to go to him. And God refreshes him in Genesis chapter 15, and he says, I am your shield. I am your exceedingly great reward. See, God presents himself, and he says, I know you're feeling this way. I know you're doubting yourself, and you are doubting this promise, but remember that I am your shield, and above everything, I'm the greatest thing in your life. And so when you're going through doubt, when you're going through feelings of, could this really be true? Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it's going to happen to someone else, but not me. That's where you have to breathe over yourself and say, but God, you are my shield. You are my exceedingly great reward. So even if I don't have it right now and I see someone else have that, you are my reward. And that's the best thing. I'm going to focus right here. And I love in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16, where it's we are encouraged to put on the armor of God. And one of the weapons that we have, or one of the defenses that we have, is called the shield of faith. And it says, put on the shield of faith, or take up the shield of faith, and which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. So when you are being attacked with these thoughts of doubt, when you are being attacked with even comparison, that's when you can say, you take up the shield of faith. I don't see it right now, but I believe what God says about me, and it will happen. It's not right now, but I'm going to focus, and I'm going to allow my faith. I'm going to allow my faith in God to water down all the weapons of the enemy. The enemy wants to bring us down in such a way where we don't believe, where our faith begins to waver. And so that's where we have to make the choice. I know that there's thoughts of doubt. I know that, what I'm seeing around me, I see, other people, but you know what? I'm going to focus that you are my great reward, God, and that what you have promised, you are going to do it. And even God says that to Abraham. Abraham, no. That the plan you have concocted in your mind that your servant will inherit the promise, no. Abraham, no. And sometimes we need to hear that from God, right? We need that double check in our lives where God is saying, you know what, Doris? No, stop. You need to get out of this, whatever plan you've made, and just trust in me. Then we have Jacob. And in the life of Jacob, you read that in Genesis chapter 31. And, God had given this promise to Jacob, and he said, I will be with you and I will bring you back to this land. That was the promise. And through the course of time, Jacob lives with his father-in-law, and his father-in-law was not a good person. Jacob worked for him, but the way that his father-in-law treated him was like a slave. Jacob didn't own anything. Jacob, had nothing to his name. And so Jacob starts questioning, but God, you promised that you would be with me. You promised that you would prosper my way, but I have nothing to my name. And, that's when Jacob had to remember, wait a minute, God said this about me. And God visits Jacob through a dream and gives him this business plan. And he begins to prosper. And his father-in-law got so mad, and, he's like, no, you're tricking me. And Jacob's like, no, I've been working for you for years, and you have deceived me. You haven't given me my proper wages. You haven't been good to me, and we're family. and so, Jacob decides to leave, even with, whatever little he had. He was like, I'm leaving because I'm going based on this promise. God, you're with me, and you promised that you would bring me back to this land. And so he's like, I'm leaving. I'm going to where God told me that he had this for me. And sometimes when we're going through that discouragement, that's what we need to remember. When we feel discouraged, when other people take advantage of us, or we feel like, that we're, other people are not believing in our worth, or not believing in what God has placed in us, or the promise that God has placed in us, we have to remember that prosperity is in God's hands, that we are in his hands, and that he is our source, and that in spite of whoever deceives you, in spite of who tries to swindle you, tries to lie to you, God protects you. God is with you. And that's when you have to get up, believe in yourself, believe that in the promise of God, believe in what he said to you, and know, okay, wherever I go, God is with me. And it doesn't matter if there is someone evil out there that wants to take advantage of me or doesn't want to see me prosper. Okay, even if I don't prosper in this moment, God will prosper me. I believe it. I believe that somewhere and from somehow God will prosper my life because my life is in his hands. Then we have the life of Moses. And Moses, man, we didn't have to go too far in reading about his life to see the doubts and the excuses that had built up over time. And in Exodus chapter 4, Moses, says to God, but are you sure you want to choose me? Like me. I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to do this. Why don't you choose someone else? Like, I have a past. And God begins to say to him, Moses, stop. It doesn't matter what excuse you bring to me. Who am I? Because this isn't about you. This is about me. This is about the God that you trust. This is about also what I've placed in your hands. And so God says to Moses, what is in your hands? What do you have? See, when you trust in God and you start to look towards him, that's what he's going to tell you. He's going to say, what do you have in your hands? Remember for what purpose God has created you. Remember that God designed you, that God created you unique. He didn't make you like anyone else. Yes, someone else could have your name. Someone else could look like you. But you have special abilities. You have special gifts. You have special talent. You have a special voice that is unique to you. You have your past. Okay. That past, whatever, even if it was ugly, even if it was a mess, God will use it for his good. See, that's what makes you different. That's what sets you apart. And so, God says to Moses, quit trying to be like someone else. Quit trying to, say, this isn't for me. No, I can't do this. God is saying, believe in God, believe in yourself. And, that's when we're fighting that doubt, when we're fighting that discouragement, that's what we need to hold on to. God, you are the miracle maker. You are the great I am. You are the one who's with me, that supports me. Then we see Samuel, and we see the beginning of Samuel's life, and that he's so young, but God begins to speak to him, and God speaks to him and tells him this awful thing. He's like, he gives him his first prophetic word, and Samuel doesn't even know what to do with it, because he's like, if I say this to the priest Eli, I don't know what will happen. I'll probably get in trouble. I haven't even been in this for a long time. I'm just a kid. I'm scared to say this. And even the priest Eli says to him, no matter what God told you, even if it's strong, say it to me. And, that's when we're fighting that doubt and that discouragement in ourselves, when we say, well, I'm too young, or I don't have experience, or I don't have it like someone else. Like, why didn't God speak to the priest Eli? But that didn't matter. God spoke to Samuel, and it was Samuel's responsibility to do whatever God told him to do. He had to obey. And so Samuel had a choice, either to back out as a young kid or to say, you know what? God gave me this, and I'm going to let it loose because that was given to me. And, that's where we have to rely on that. Hey, it's not up to us. It's about the anointing that God has placed over us, and that God will take care of that situation. When God places something on your life and he says, encourage someone, even as scary as it is, like send a letter to someone or call someone or text someone, as scary as it is, do it, because God will support you. If God told you to do it, God will support you. God has put an anointing over your life to do it. And it doesn't matter your experience. It doesn't matter your title. It doesn't matter how old you are. God spoke to Samuel and he was so specific, and it came true. And I love how it says in 1 Samuel chapter 3, God said, it says that Samuel grew, and he grew into a kind of prophet that his words did not fall to the ground. Imagine that this is a learning process. This is about growth. How many times will we make mistakes? We will make mistakes. Mistakes will happen. But the fact is that we trust in God, that even when we're scared, even when we doubt, even when we get discouraged, we need to get ourselves back up, rise up and say, God, I choose to trust in you. God, I choose to believe everything you said about me. Yes, it's scary. It's scary what I have to do and when you ask me to obey, but I'm going to do it. And the last person that we're going to look at today is Paul. And Paul was in a time where he was on fire for God, right? And he was spreading the gospel, but it was also during a time where they suffered persecution. And when it was real. People were being killed. People were being beaten. People were being put in jail because of their belief in Jesus and because they were spreading the gospel. And Paul faces that. But God was very specific in that time period in Acts chapter 18, and God says to Paul, continue the work of the Lord. Do not be afraid. Speak and do not keep silent. So it was God's will in that time. God knew that there were a lot of people in that region, in that city, that needed to be saved. And so what God was saying is, I'm protecting you in this moment so that you can spread the gospel. And there were people that didn't believe in him. And Paul said, you know what? I'm going to dust this off. You don't believe in me. You don't believe in the ministry that I've been called to. The Jewish people didn't believe in him. And he was like, you know what? This is making me even stronger to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. And Gentiles means people that were not Jewish. And so God was saying to him, do not be afraid. Yes, there will be people in your life that will criticize you. Yes, there will be people that will reject you. Yes, there will be people that will betray you and abandon you. There will be people that will speak badly about you for no reason. There will be people that will make fun of you. This is what men and women of faith went through, but they overcame. They had unwavering faith because they chose to believe in everything that God said about them. Paul had to stand on his 2 feet and say, even if you don't believe in me, even if you were my friend before and now you're not my friend, I'm going to continue spreading the gospel. I'm going to continue doing what God has called me to do. When we are being challenged with doubt and discouragement and fear, that's when we need to realize who we are believing. Am I going to believe what other people say about me, or am I going to believe in what God says? Am I going to believe in the approval of God? That's all you need. That when God calls you to do something and you know that it's God's will, that you stand firmly, that you stand confidently in that you are not shaken by what other people do or they don't do. You're not living for them. You're living for God. Remember that. These men and women of faith were able to surpass and overcome their challenges. Yes, it took time for them to see the fruit of their labor. Right now, you could be in that labor moment. You are sowing seeds. You are picking up the weeds. You are, digging that ground. You are making sure that you are taking care of what God has placed in your hands. Don't give up. No matter what you are going through, no matter what you're facing externally, no matter what you're facing internally, keep going. That is what I'm choosing. Every time I wake up, and even when I go to sleep, and sometimes I can't sleep, and I'm like, I'm choosing you, God. And if I'm going to be in this battle, you better know I'm going to fight. I'm not going to stand with my hands crossed, as weak as I feel, as weak as it, or however I feel that I can't even breathe. That's when I call upon the Lord and I say, you are my strength. Like God said to Abraham, you know, I am your shield. I am your exceedingly great reward. Even if those are the only words that I can say, that I can mouth, God, you are my reward. Yes, I feel like this. Yes, I don't know what's happening, but I choose you. I choose that you are my protector, that you're my defender. You are my reward. You know, sometimes we want to see things already happen in our lives. These men and women of faith feel you in this moment that we read about. They didn't see the promise. They were waiting, but they chose to keep going on. I challenge you to keep moving forward. I challenge you to pick yourself up, even if it feels like this hurts, even if it feels like, you know, you feel like giving up. Keep going. God is with you. God's anointing is over you. You can overcome this. So I want to thank you so much for connecting today, and I hope that this word blesses your life and that you continue. We still have one more week. Next week we enter into I choose to believe that God is not finished with me yet. So keep on going. Keep on pursuing God. God is with you. God loves you. He is your shield. He is your exceedingly great reward. So have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.